This is a video where I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use Git in order to check into Teiravon. And I'm going to start with what Git is and how it works, and just really briefly just talk about it. And then after that, I'm going to tell you how we like our goal when using Git, and I'm going to show you how to do it firsthand. So the big thing about Git is that it's a completely decentralized form of version control, and that means that everybody has more or less a full copy of every change ever made to the server. Now, when you pull from GitHub, which is where we keep everything, you can actually choose to get a small subset of the changes. Generally, you're probably going to get like all of the master branch and probably not much of most other things. But that's basically just by convention. We choose to use Git that way. So basically, you could, if you set up like a little listener on your computer, we could use you instead of GitHub if we wanted to. Internally, Git is structured like a graph of changes, a directed graph. So you can see here we have our first change, and then we have commit after commit after commit, where people check in new changes to the codebase. And Git doesn't just hold on to the final state of the codebase here at the end. It has every single change ever committed and the change that came before it. However, the graph isn't just in a single line, it's a full graph, and so you can branch off changes here and then merge them back in with a special kind of commit called a merge commit that has two parents. Using merge commits is going to be pretty key to how we manage our Git repository, and I'll show you that in a second. The important thing is that Git is pretty good at pulling in two different changes in order to create a single merged whole. And there's a lot of tools that we use in order to assist us with that. It makes it easy for us to do things like manage Citadel updates to the vanilla code fixes codebase. The reason why is that we manage all of the Citadel updates as a single line, and we manage all of the fixes as kind of branch changes like this. And so every time we have a new Citadel change, we load it into the main line like this, and then we create a merged commit of the new Citadel changes added to our fixes. And because Git is really good at managing these kinds of combined updates, it makes it really easy for us to keep everything up to date while maintaining our fixes in the vanilla fixes codebase. There's one last feature that you should be aware of in Git, and that's this concept of tagging. So you can see here that we've tagged this commit as fixes, and we've tagged this commit as master. We can move these tags around. Tags are a concept in Git. We can move these tags around and have them point at different commits, and anytime we interact with Git, we can interact with it by this tag. So we can say, instead of saying give me the add items commit, we can say give me the commit that master is pointed at. There are many different types of tags in Git, but the one that we work with the most often are called branches. So anytime you create a new branch to work in, what you're actually creating is a new tag, and it's pointed at the commit that you would like to use as the starting commit for your branch. And when you check in a new commit, the tag gets moved as well. It gets updated to the new change that you checked in. So that's enough about how Git works. Let's talk about how we want to use Git as part of the Teiravon update process. Once you are given access to the Teiravon GitHub repository, you can look at it here and see that the default branch is called live. This is the branch that all of our checked in code lives in. So when something is ready to be pushed to the live server, you will add your changes to the live branch. Once it's there, we can pull it down to the live server. From any other branch, for instance, this is my magic system update branch, it's very easy for us to push things to the test server, and from there make sure that it works okay. After your change has finished testing, you can then create a pull request to send it to the live branch. Let me walk you through what that means step by step. First of all, you'll want to go to sourcetreeapp.com. You're going to want to download SourceTree, which is an easy to use visual Git app that you can use to check in your changes and submit pull requests. It's much easier than using the command line, which is the default. During the install process, you'll have to link your GitHub account. You can do this by selecting GitHub from the list and just leaving the rest of the options at their default. When you attempt to link your GitHub account, it will open a browser window that navigates to localhost. It doesn't appear to have done anything, but it did work, so don't worry about it. Eventually, it will ask you to clone your first GitHub repository. When it does that, make sure to select Teiravon from the list. If it doesn't appear, you may not have access, so make sure that you have access to the repositories that you need before installing SourceTree. You may have to create a new folder in order to allow Teiravon to be installed to the place that you want. SourceTree will eventually ask you for your login credentials for GitHub so that it can clone the repository and install it to your local system. Once you've installed SourceTree, you should be looking at this graph view right here. It's a little confusing at first, but it's not so hard to make sense of. You can see that the branch tags that we mentioned earlier are right here in the graph view, pointing to different commits. You can also see that these commits frequently separate and then reconjoin with the blue line that represents the live branch. So now that we're ready to work, let's look at the process for creating a new feature and submitting it to Teiravon. First, we're going to make our own branch, and it needs to be based on the same commit that the live branch is currently pointing to. In order to make sure that we don't build our branch off of an older version of the live branch, let's click the pull button to make sure that we have the latest version of everything. It has this prompt here for you. The important thing is that we want to pull from the origin remote, which is GitHub, and we also want to pull the live branch. And we're done. It turns out that we didn't have any changes in GitHub that we needed to pull. So next we're going to click the branch button to create our own branch to work on. I like to put my initials here at the beginning so people know that it's my branch. What's important to notice is that there is a CV my branch branch, but there is no origin/CV my branch. But there is a live and an origin/live. When multiple remotes have access to the same branch, they set up what are called tracking branches. And what this means is, so for instance, we have the live branch that exists here on my computer. It's a tracking branch for the origin/live branch. And when origin/live is updated, and we use pull, live will be updated to match origin/live. There are no tracking branches on GitHub for my CV my branch. And the reason why is I haven't submitted it to GitHub yet. So there's just the local branch. Now it's time to make your changes. Make sure you make your changes in the same folder you set up this repository to when you installed SourceTree. Once you've made your changes, you should see a new item on the graph called Uncommitted Changes. And you can take a look down here to see what the changes are. The easiest place to check out your changes is right here in the Working Copy section under File Status. You can see right here that there are a number of unstaged files, and when you're ready you can stage them. What staged means is that all of these changes are ready to be committed. In fact, if you make additional changes to the same file after staging the changes, the staged changes will remain the same, but the additional unstaged changes will be separate, which means that you can go ahead and commit these directly and wait until later to commit the unstaged changes. It's pretty useful. You can also stash your changes if you're not ready to commit them yet by using the stash button. And it will stash both your staged and unstaged changes. Sometimes you have to do this in order to switch branches or pull in new changes from live. And then once the new changes are pulled in, you can unstash these changes by applying the stash. You should be aware, though, that your staged changes will be wiped, and only your unstaged changes will be kept around. When you're done with the stash, you should delete it. Otherwise, you're going to have way too many stashes. Once you're ready to check in your changes, stage all of the ones that you want to check in, and then you can write a little message. You should explain what you did and why you did it. You can just commit in order to keep the commit around on your local branch, but if you're ready to push this change up to GitHub, you should select push changes immediately to whatever. And anytime you see this little dash instead of a branch name, it means that there's not any tracking branch, but it will create one when you commit. Okay, so let's go back here. You can see that our tracking branch now exists. That means that the branch is up on GitHub. So let's go ahead and go to GitHub and take a look at what happened. So as soon as you arrive at GitHub, you can see that we not only have our branch here, and we can take a look at what it did. We clicked on the branch to load the branch into this view, and you can see that the most recent commit is the one that we just did. Nice! But the really beautiful thing about it is that we're given the option to immediately create a pull request. As you can see, this pull request will move the change from the CV My Branch to the live branch. Now we're not going to do this right now because that would put it onto the branch that is used by the live server, which means that the next time Teiravon pulls new fixes to the live server, this would go with it, and this change is a little weird, so I don't necessarily want to do that. What we can do immediately is send this branch to testing on the test server. In order to deploy your changes to the test server, you'll want to go into the development channel and send a message to Librarian, our deployment bot. You just want to say librarian deploy mod / and then the name of your branch, CV My Branch, to test. You'll see that it responds immediately, stating that it sees your deployment request, but it can take several seconds to actually deploy the changes. There we go. At this point, the shutdown message has been sent to the test server, and we should be seeing the new server come back up in about 60 to 90 seconds with your changes. And then you can log into the test server using your Legends of Aria client. Make sure that your changes are all good, that there hasn't been any unintended consequences. And once you're ready, you can then submit your PR to move these changes to the live server. One thing to keep in mind is that you may have to change branches relatively often. You can do so by double-clicking the branch that you want to move to on the left side here. Once you've done that, your local copy of the code is going to match the live branch instead of the changes that you've made to your branch. You can use this to maintain several branches at a time. For instance, if you have a change that has become blocked, you're waiting on somebody else to do something, you can switch to another branch and keep working on something totally different. And you can maintain these branches and switch back and forth between them completely freely. For this reason, don't be shy about checking in changes and pushing them to GitHub. Pushing your changes doesn't commit you to pushing those changes to live, and it's an easy way to back up your work while allowing you to move to a different branch and work on something else. In many cases, it's a better idea to commit your changes rather than stash them. You should save stashing for situations where your code isn't building or it's not clear what you're doing yet. Any situation where it would actually be harmful to check the code in. So let's review. If you want to make a change to Teiravon, here's what you do. You branch live. You pull live down to make sure that it's up to date. Then you branch it. After you branch it, you make your changes. Then you commit that after staging them. Once they're committed to GitHub, you use Discord to push the changes to the test server. Then, once you're certain that the changes are good, you create a PR to submit them to live. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Thank you for watching. I hope that this answers a lot of questions that you might have about how to get your changes onto the live server.